The sound of the hotel room door clicking open froze James Carter in place. He stood motionless, one shoe off and one still on, his suit jacket hanging from his fingertips. It was 11:47 p.m., and he was certain he had not ordered room service. The door swung open slowly, revealing a tall woman with deep brown skin and a startled expression that likely mirrored his own. For 3 long seconds they stared at each other in the doorway of the penthouse suite. Him half-dressed for bed, her gripping a rolling suitcase with white knuckles. The key card in her hand glinted under the hallway light. "I think there's been a mistake," they both said at exactly the same time. James recovered first, quickly putting his shoe back on. The woman didn't move, her eyes scanning the room behind him. Taking in the open laptop on the desk, his suitcase splayed open on the luggage rack, the half-empty glass of whiskey on the nightstand. "This is my room," he said, trying to keep his voice calm despite the strange intrusion. "Suite 3001. The woman frowned, looking down at the key card in her hand, then back up at him. "That's impossible. The front desk just gave me this key. Suite 3001. For a moment, James wondered if this was some elaborate robbery scheme. After all, people like him, people with money, were always targets. But something about her confusion seemed genuine. She wore simple jeans and a cream-colored sweater, her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun. She didn't look like a thief, but then again, what did a thief look like? "Let me see that," he said, stepping forward and holding out his hand for the key card. She hesitated before passing it over, maintaining a careful distance between them. James examined it closely. The card was identical to his own. Same hotel logo, same silver stripe at the bottom. And sure enough, handwritten in small letters on the back was 3001. "This is definitely my room," he insisted, pulling out his own key card from his pocket. "See? I checked in this afternoon." She peered at his card, then sighed heavily, frustration clear on her face. "I just flew in from London. It's nearly midnight, I'm exhausted, and now the hotel has apparently double-booked my room." She looked up at him, her dark eyes tired but determined. "I'm going back downstairs to sort this out." As she turned to leave, dragging her suitcase behind her, James felt a strange impulse. In his normal life, the carefully controlled world he built as CEO of Carter Investments, he would have simply closed the door and gone to bed, grateful the intrusion wasn't something worse. But tonight felt different somehow. "Wait," he called after her. "I'll come with you." She paused, looking back at him with surprise. Why would you do that? It was a fair question. Why would he, James Carter, billionaire businessman with a reputation for being cold and efficient, offer to help a complete stranger at midnight? "Because it's partly my problem too," he replied, grabbing his jacket again. "And because it's the right thing to do." The woman studied him for a moment as if trying to determine his motives, then nodded slightly. "I'm Olivia," she said. "Olivia Johnson." "James Carter," he replied, extending his hand. Her handshake was firm, her skin warm against his. "Well, Mr. Carter, let's go figure out why the Grand Plaza Hotel thinks we should be roommates." As they rode the elevator down to the lobby, James stole glances at Olivia. She stood tall and composed despite her evident exhaustion. There was something striking about her, not just her beauty, which was considerable, but a kind of quiet dignity that seemed to radiate from her. The night manager looked horrified when they approached the desk together. He typed frantically at his computer, his face growing paler by the second. "I am so terribly sorry, Ms. Johnson, Mr. Carter," he stammered. "There appears to have been a system error when we upgraded Ms. Johnson to a suite. The computer showed 3001 as vacant when it clearly is not." "So where am I supposed to stay?" Olivia asked, her voice level but firm. The manager's fingers flew across the keyboard. "We're completely booked because of the International Finance Conference," he explained, looking increasingly distressed. "But we do have the presidential suite available. It's significantly more expensive than what you booked, of course, but under the circumstances, we'll provide it at no additional charge." Olivia nodded, relieved. "That will work. Thank you." As the manager prepared the new key card, James found himself reluctant to end this unexpected encounter. There was something intriguing about Olivia Johnson, something that made him want to know more. "Are you here for the finance conference?" he asked as they waited. She nodded. "I'm presenting a paper on microfinance initiatives in developing countries. My first time speaking at an event this large." She smiled slightly. "I'm nervous, to be honest." "I'm sure you'll be excellent," James replied, surprised by his own words. He wasn't typically one for empty encouragement. The night manager returned with a new key card. "The presidential suite, Ms. Johnson." And again, our sincerest apologies for the mix-up. Olivia accepted the key. Thank you. She turned to James. And thank you for coming down with me. You didn't have to do that. It was no trouble, he said, suddenly aware of how much he didn't want her to walk away. Before he could talk himself out of it, he added, maybe we could grab coffee tomorrow? I'd be interested to hear about your work. Surprise flickered across her face, followed by a smile that transformed her features. You know what? I like that. How about the hotel cafe at 9? Perfect, James agreed, feeling an unfamiliar flutter of anticipation. As they stepped back into the elevator together, he to return to Suite 3001, she to find the presidential suite on the 32nd floor. Neither could have guessed how that simple key card mix-up would change everything. Nor could they have imagined the storm that was brewing, ready to test whatever connection was forming between them. Because what Olivia Johnson didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that someone had wanted her in that specific room tonight for a very particular reason. And now that the plan had failed, things were about to get complicated. Very complicated indeed. The hotel cafe buzzed with morning activity as James settled at a corner table, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. It was 8:55 a.m. He'd arrived early, something he did for business meetings but never for social encounters. Then again, he rarely had social encounters at all. At exactly 9 o'clock, Olivia walked through the door. She traded last night's travel clothes for a tailored navy blue pantsuit, her hair now styled in loose curls that framed her face. Several heads turned as she made her way across the room, but her eyes were already fixed on James. Good morning, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Did you sleep well after our midnight adventure? James found himself smiling. Better than expected. You. Like a rock. The presidential suite has a bed the size of my entire London apartment. She picked up the menu. Though I did wonder if I dreamed the whole thing. A mix-up with a billionaire's hotel room seems like something from a movie, not real life. James raised an eyebrow. You know who I am? Olivia looked up, her expression amused. I googled you after I got to my room. James Carter, CEO of Carter Investments. Your net worth was the first thing that came up. She shrugged. I like to know who I'm having coffee with. Fair enough, he conceded. And what did the internet tell you about me? That you're 39, never married, known for being brilliant but ruthless in business, and that you give generously to education charities but otherwise keep a low profile. She took a sip of water. It didn't mention that you help strangers with hotel mix-ups at midnight. James felt unexpectedly seen, both the public persona and the glimpse of something else she'd witnessed last night. It was disconcerting. And what about you? What would I find if I googled Olivia Johnson? Much less, I'm sure, she replied. I'm a professor of economics at University College London, specializing in development economics and microfinance. I've published some papers, done fieldwork in several countries, and recently secured a major research grant. Nothing that would put me on the Forbes list. The waiter appeared, and they ordered black coffee for him, a cappuccino for her, and pastries to share. So, James said when they were alone again, tell me about this paper you're presenting. For the next hour they talked, really talked, in a way James couldn't remember doing with anyone in years. Olivia spoke passionately about her work, about systems that could lift people out of poverty and the obstacles preventing their implementation. James found himself sharing more than he'd intended about his own career path, about building Carter Investments from the ground up after his father's small investment firm collapsed under suspicious circumstances. That must have been difficult, Olivia said thoughtfully. Rebuilding from scratch with your father's reputation hanging over you. James stared at her, surprised by her insight. There was, everyone expected me to fail, or worse, to be just like him. Is that why you're so, she hesitated. Ruthless, he supplied. I was going to say careful, she corrected. You seem like someone who's built very strong walls. Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment, James felt strangely vulnerable. He was saved from responding by the chiming of his phone. I'm sorry, he said, glancing at the screen. I need to take this. Olivia nodded understandingly as he answered the call. Carter, he said crisply. His CFO's voice came through, tense and urgent. James, we have a problem. The merger documents for Horizon Tech, they've been leaked. Someone sent copies to 3 different financial news outlets this morning. James felt his body go cold. The Horizon Tech merger was supposed to be completely confidential until the announcement next week. A leak of this magnitude could jeopardize the entire deal, a deal that represented months of work and billions in potential value. How bad is it? He asked quietly, turning slightly away from Olivia. Bad. The journal is running the story within the hour. The stock is already starting to move. I'll be right there. He ended the call and turned back to Olivia, already shifting into crisis mode. I'm very sorry, but there's an emergency at work. I have to go. Disappointment flashed across her face before she composed herself. Of course, I understand. As he stood to leave, James hesitated. The rational part of his brain, the part that had built his business empire, was already focused on damage control for the leak. But something else made him pull out a business card and write his personal number on the back. I'd like to continue our conversation, he said, sliding the card across the table. Maybe dinner tonight? If you're free. Olivia picked up the card, studying it for a moment before tucking it into her jacket pocket. I'd like that, she said with a smile that made his pulse quicken despite the crisis waiting for him. Call me when you've saved your company. As James rushed out of the cafe, he was already making mental lists of who could have leaked the merger documents. The list of people with access was short: his executive team, the lawyers, and a few board members. All people he'd personally vetted and trusted. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that someone had wanted those documents leaked today for a very specific reason. And that same someone had wanted Olivia Johnson in his hotel room last night. The connection between these two events would soon become horribly clear. Olivia sat in the conference hall, trying to focus on the current speaker, a distinguished economist from Harvard discussing market fluctuations in emerging economies. Her presentation wasn't until tomorrow, but she'd planned to spend today taking notes and networking. Instead, her mind kept drifting to her breakfast with James Carter and the mysterious emergency that had called him away. The news about Carter Investments had broken mid-morning. The business channels were buzzing with speculation about the leaked merger, and Olivia had watched with interest as financial analysts debated the implications. She wondered how James was handling the crisis, whether he was in emergency meetings or making public statements to calm investors. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She discreetly checked it, surprised to see a message from an unknown number. Dinner still on for tonight? Crisis contained, though not resolved. Would 8 p.m. work? James. She felt an unexpected flutter of excitement as she typed back a simple, yes. 8 p.m. is perfect. As she returned her attention to the presentation, a man slid into the seat beside her. He was in his 50s, expensively dressed, with silver-streaked dark hair and sharp eyes that assessed her openly. Dr. Johnson, he said quietly. William Hargrove. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Olivia gave him a polite smile, though something about his appearance at her side made her uneasy. Mr. Hargrove. I don't believe we've been introduced. We haven't, he confirmed, but I'm familiar with your work, particularly your recent paper on financial transparency and corporate investments in developing nations. I'm flattered you've read it, she replied carefully. Hargrove's smile didn't reach his eyes. Let's just say I have a vested interest. I understand you had breakfast with James Carter this morning. The statement caught her off guard. How could he possibly know that? She kept her expression neutral, years of academic politics helping her maintain composure. Does that surprise you, Mr. Hargrove? She asked evenly. That I might know Mr. Carter? Not at all, he said smoothly. In fact, it's exactly what I expected. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. But I think you should know who you're getting involved with. James Carter isn't the man he pretends to be. Olivia stiffened. And you are. Let's just say I'm someone who knows the real James Carter. He slipped a small USB drive onto her program booklet. Everything you need to know is on this, including information about how he really built his fortune. Before she could respond, Hargrove stood. Your presentation tomorrow, about ethical investment in developing regions, might be more impactful with this information. Just something to consider, Dr. Johnson. With that, he walked away, leaving Olivia staring at the USB drive. She picked it up cautiously, turning it over in her hand. What game was Hargrove playing? And what could possibly be on this drive that would change her opinion of James? The presenter's voice faded into the background as her mind raced. The keycard mix-up, the leaked merger documents, and now this mysterious USB. Was it all connected? It seemed impossible, yet the timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Her instinct was to throw the USB away. She barely knew James Carter, but their conversation had felt genuine. Yet her academic curiosity, the same curiosity that had driven her research for years, made her slip the drive into her pocket. Later, in the privacy of the presidential suite, Olivia paced back and forth, staring at the USB drive she'd placed on the desk. Her laptop sat open, waiting. Part of her felt she was betraying James by even considering looking at whatever Hargrove had given her. Another part argued that she'd be naive not to at least see what it contained. With a deep breath, she plugged in the drive. The files were meticulously organized: financial records, private emails, photographs, and a detailed document labeled Carter Investments, the true foundation. She clicked on it and began to read. According to the document, Carter Investments' first major success, the acquisition of a struggling tech company that later became worth billions, had been based on insider information obtained illegally. Worse, the document claimed that James had systematically bribed officials in several countries to secure profitable deals in emerging markets, the very kind of corruption her research aimed to expose. Olivia felt sick. If these allegations were true, James Carter represented everything she'd spent her career fighting against. But were they true? The evidence seemed compelling. Emails, bank transfers, photographs of meetings with known corrupt officials. Her phone chimed with a message: "Looking forward to seeing you at 8. I've made reservations at Lumiere. James." Olivia stared at his message, then back at her laptop screen. What should she do? Confront him with this information? Pretend she'd never seen it? Cancel dinner altogether? A knock at her door startled her out of her thoughts. She quickly closed her laptop and went to answer, expecting perhaps hotel staff would turn down service. Instead, she found James Carter standing in the hallway, his expression grim. "I'm sorry to come by unannounced," he said, "but we need to talk. Someone's trying to set me up, and I think they're using you to do it." Olivia felt her heart race. "What do you mean?" James glanced down the hallway before meeting her eyes again. "May I come in? This isn't a conversation we should have in the corridor." She hesitated only briefly before stepping aside to let him enter. As she closed the door behind him, she couldn't help but notice her laptop on the desk, the USB drive still plugged into its side. James followed her gaze, his expression darkening when he spotted the drive. "I see William Hargrove found you already. You know him?" Olivia asked, surprised. "We have a history," James replied, his voice tight. "And now it seems he's dragging you into it." He gestured to the laptop. "I assume that drive contains all sorts of damning evidence against me?" Olivia nodded slowly. "It does. Is it true?" James ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly tired. "No, not in the way he's presented it." He moved to the window, looking out at the city skyline. "But it's a convincing lie, isn't it? Woven with just enough truth to seem plausible. Why would he do this? And why involve me?" James turned back to face her. "That's what I came to tell you. Hargrove was my father's business partner 20 years ago. They were involved in exactly the kind of corruption he's now accusing me of. When I discovered it, I was going to expose them both, but my father..." He paused, the old pain still evident in his voice. "My father took his own life rather than face the consequences. Hargrove managed to escape prosecution on a technicality, but he lost everything. And he blames you," Olivia concluded. "Yes. He spent years trying to destroy me, and now he's found the perfect weapon." James gestured toward her laptop. "Your research, your reputation for integrity. If you were to use those allegations in your presentation tomorrow, it would destroy your credibility," she finished quietly. "And with the merger already in jeopardy from the leak, Carter Investments would likely not survive." James met her gaze directly. "The question is, do you believe him or me?" Olivia studied him carefully. She barely knew this man, yet something in her wanted desperately to trust him. But could she? Should she? "I don't know what to believe," she admitted finally. "But I do know that I need more than just your word against his." James nodded as if he'd expected this response. "Fair enough." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a flash drive of his own. "This contains the real evidence. About Hargrove, about my father, about what really happened 20 years ago. I've kept it secure all this time as insurance." He placed it on the desk beside her laptop. "Take your time. Look at both sides. Then decide." He moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "For what it's worth, Olivia, breakfast this morning was the most honest conversation I've had with anyone in years." After he left, Olivia stood motionless in the center of the room, looking from one flash drive to the other. The truth was somewhere between these two small devices, and she had until tomorrow morning to find it. Because her presentation wasn't just about abstract principles anymore. It had become a weapon that could destroy a man's life work, and possibly something else that had only just begun. The hotel restaurant Lumiere sparkled with subdued elegance, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over white tablecloths and polished silverware. Olivia arrived exactly at 8, wearing a simple black dress that suddenly felt inadequate for the setting. James was already there, standing when he saw her approach. "You came," he said, relief evident in his voice. "I said I would," she replied, allowing him to pull out her chair. A tension hung between them, the unspoken weight of Hargrove's accusations and James's counterclaims. Neither mentioned the flash drives as the waiter poured water and presented menus. "I recommend the Dover Sole," James said, attempting normalcy. "It's excellent here." Olivia set her menu down. "I spent the last 3 hours going through both sets of documents." James's expression remained carefully neutral. And I have questions." He nodded, signaling to the waiter. "We'll need some time before ordering." When they were alone again, James leaned forward. "Ask me anything. I'll tell you the truth." "The photos of you meeting with Minister Okafor in Lagos," she began. "Hargrove's files suggest you were arranging bribes for mining rights." "I was meeting with him about setting up scholarship programs in communities affected by mining operations," James replied without hesitation. The full context of those emails shows that clearly. "And the money transfers to offshore accounts? Payments to legitimate community development funds, all properly registered and audited." He held her gaze steadily. "Everything Hargrove gave you is either fabricated or deliberately taken out of context." For the next hour, Olivia methodically went through each allegation, and James answered every question directly. His responses matched the evidence he provided on his own flash drive, documents that painted a very different picture of Carter Investments' operations. "Your father," she said finally, approaching the most sensitive topic. "Hargrove claims you betrayed him, that you were going to turn him in to save yourself." Pain flashed across James's face before he could mask it. "My father betrayed everything he taught me about integrity. When I discovered what he and Hargrove were doing, I confronted him privately first, gave him the chance to make it right." He looked down at his untouched water glass. "He chose a permanent escape instead. Hargrove never forgave me for that." The waiter appeared again, and this time they ordered simple dishes neither of them would likely taste. "I believe you," Olivia said quietly when they were alone again. James looked up sharply. "Why?" It was a strange question. Most people would simply accept being believed. But James Carter wasn't most people. "Because your evidence is more complete," she began. "But also because of how you've answered my questions, directly, without defensiveness." She paused. "And because I trust my instincts about people. Always have." "Those instincts could be wrong," he pointed out. "They could be," she acknowledged. "But I'm choosing to have faith in them anyway." She reached across the table and briefly touched his hand. "Faith in people is always a risk. Sometimes it's worth taking." Something shifted in James's expression, a softening around his eyes, a vulnerability he rarely allowed himself to show. "What will you do for your presentation tomorrow?" he asked. "My original presentation," she replied firmly. "About systems that can transform lives when implemented with integrity. Not about William Hargrove's vendetta." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you. Don't thank me for doing the right thing," she said with a small smile. "Though I am curious, how did you know Hargrove had approached me so quickly?" "I didn't," James admitted. "But when I traced the merger leak back to a hacked email account, I found other surveillance, photos of us at breakfast, hotel records showing your room assignment. It wasn't hard to guess his next move. So the key card mix-up," Olivia began, "was deliberate," James confirmed. "Hargrove has connections at the hotel. He wanted you in my room, probably had it bugged. When that failed, he moved to Plan B." A chill ran through Olivia as she realized how elaborately she'd been manipulated. "And the merger leak was timed to distract you while he approached me." James nodded. "Hargrove has always been thorough. Their food arrived, but neither paid much attention to it." The conversation shifted to lighter topics. Her life in London, his rare time away from work, books they'd both read, places they'd traveled. Despite the circumstances, Olivia found herself laughing at James's surprisingly dry humor, while he seemed genuinely interested in her stories from fieldwork in rural communities. As they shared dessert, a dark chocolate souffle neither had ordered but the chef had insisted they try, James asked, "What happens after tomorrow?" "You return to London, I stay here dealing with the merger fallout." The question hung between them, full of unspoken possibilities. "I don't know," Olivia admitted. "This isn't exactly how I expected this conference to go." "Nor I," James agreed with a wry smile. though I'm finding it hard to regret that key card mix-up, despite everything that followed. Their eyes met across the table, and Olivia felt that same connection she'd experienced during their first coffee. A sense of recognition, as if they'd known each other much longer than a day. "Let's get through tomorrow first," she suggested. "Your merger, my presentation. Then we can figure out what happens next." As they left the restaurant, James insisted on walking her back to her suite. In the elevator, he said, "I should warn you, Hargrove won't give up easily." When he realizes his plan failed. "You think he'll try something else?" Olivia finished. "During my presentation." "It's possible," James said grimly. "I've arranged for additional security, but be prepared for anything." Outside her door they paused. In any other circumstance, this would be the moment for a goodnight kiss. Instead, James took her hand and squeezed it gently. "Thank you for believing me," he said softly. "Not many people would have." "Then they don't know you very well," she replied, suddenly aware of how much she wanted to know him better. As she entered her suite alone, Olivia wondered if she was being foolish. Was she really falling for a man she'd known for just over 24 hours? A man who, until yesterday, had lived in a world completely separate from her own? What she didn't realize was that while she was questioning her judgment, James was standing in the hallway doing exactly the same thing. Because for the first time in 20 years, James Carter had let someone see past his carefully constructed walls, and it terrified him almost as much as it exhilarated him. Neither of them slept well that night, each preparing in their own way for whatever tomorrow might bring. Olivia rehearsed her presentation one final time, making sure every point was supported by solid evidence. James made calls to his security team, determined to ensure Olivia would be protected from whatever Hargrove might attempt. What neither of them could know was that Hargrove had already set his contingency plan in motion, one that would test not only their newfound trust in each other, but Olivia's deepest professional convictions. The conference hall buzzed with anticipation. Every seat was filled, unusual for an academic presentation, even one as prestigious as Olivia's. Word had somehow spread that her talk would be controversial, possibly even explosive. Standing backstage, Olivia took deep breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. Her PowerPoint slides were loaded, her notes arranged perfectly, her voice strong during sound check. Everything was ready. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, assessed, manipulated like a piece on Hargrove's chessboard. "Dr. Johnson?" A conference assistant appeared at her elbow. "There's been a last-minute addition to your panel. Dr. William Hargrove will be joining as a discussant." Olivia felt her stomach drop. That wasn't approved by the committee. The young man looked uncomfortable. The committee chair just authorized it. Apparently, Dr. Hargrove has relevant expertise on your topic. Before Olivia could protest further, the panel moderator was introducing her, and applause filled the hall. She had no choice but to walk onto the stage, smiling professionally despite the unwelcome surprise. From the front row, James caught her eye, giving her a subtle nod of encouragement. She nodded back, drawing strength from his presence. Then she began. "Good morning. My presentation today focuses on creating transparent, ethical financial systems in developing economies." Her voice grew stronger as she hit her stride, passionately explaining the research that had consumed the past 3 years of her life. For 20 minutes, she walked the audience through case studies, data analyses, and proposed solutions. The crowd was engaged, taking notes, nodding at her key points. She was nearing her conclusion when she noticed William Hargrove making his way to the discussant table, an anticipatory smile playing on his lips. As she finished to enthusiastic applause, the moderator invited questions. Several hands shot up, but the moderator turned first to Hargrove, now seated at the panel table beside her. "Dr. Hargrove, as our guest discussant, would you like to offer comments on Dr. Johnson's presentation?" Hargrove leaned into his microphone. "Thank you. Dr. Johnson's work is impressive, particularly her emphasis on transparency and accountability." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "However, I wonder if she might comment on the ethical considerations when prestigious firms like, say, Carter Investments, engage in the developing markets she studies?" A murmur went through the audience. Several people turned to look at James in the front row. Olivia's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. "While I don't typically discuss specific companies without comprehensive research, Carter Investments has generally maintained strong ethical standards in its global operations, based on publicly available data." Hargrove's smile widened. "Interesting you should say that." He turned to the audience. I've taken the liberty of preparing some supplementary materials relevant to Dr. Johnson's research. He pressed a button, and to Olivia's horror, new slides appeared on the screen behind her. Emails, financial statements, and photographs extracted from the USB drive he'd given her. These documents suggest a pattern of behavior at Carter Investments that directly contradicts Dr. Johnson's recommendations for ethical practice, Hargrove announced, his voice carrying throughout the now silent hall. From the corner of her eye, Olivia saw James tense, his expression thunderous. This was exactly what they feared. A public ambush designed to destroy both her academic credibility and his business reputation simultaneously. The moderator looked confused. Dr. Hargrove, this wasn't part of the approved presentation. Sometimes academic discourse requires unexpected interventions, Hargrove replied smoothly. I believe the audience deserves to see evidence of how major investment firms actually operate in these regions. Olivia knew she had seconds to respond before the situation spiraled beyond recovery. Drawing a deep breath, she leaned into her microphone. What the audience deserves, she said clearly, is accurate information rather than manipulated data presented without context. She stood, commanding the room's attention. Dr. Hargrove has shown you carefully edited documents designed to create a false narrative. Hargrove's smile faltered. These documents speak for themselves. Actually, they don't, Olivia countered, gaining confidence. As an economist who specializes in data integrity, I can demonstrate exactly how these materials have been altered. She turned to the audience. Would you like to see the complete documents rather than these selective extracts? A chorus of affirmative responses prompted her to connect her laptop to the projection system. She pulled up the files from James's flash drive, including metadata analyses proving manipulation of Hargrove's evidence. This isn't just about defending one company, she explained as she methodically dismantled Hargrove's claims. It's about the academic integrity that makes our research meaningful. Manipulated data helps no one, especially not the developing communities my work aims to support. For 15 tense minutes, she presented a masterclass in forensic financial analysis, highlighting discrepancies in timestamps, suspicious gaps in email chains, and contextual information missing from Hargrove's version of events. The audience, initially skeptical, began nodding in understanding. Several prominent economists in attendance exchanged knowing glances. They recognized the hallmarks of manipulated evidence when they saw it. Hargrove's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "This is absurd," he sputtered. "You're defending a corrupt billionaire because—" "I'm defending the truth," Olivia interrupted firmly. "Something your vendetta against James Carter has clearly obscured." A security guard approached Hargrove, whispering something in his ear. Hargrove glanced toward the back of the hall, where two police officers had appeared at the entrance. "This presentation is over," he announced abruptly, gathering his papers. "On the contrary," Olivia replied, "it's just becoming truly educational." She gestured to the officers. "I believe those gentlemen may want to discuss the illegal surveillance you arranged at this hotel, not to mention computer hacking and corporate espionage." Hargrove's eyes darted from the officers to James, who now stood calmly watching from the front row. "You think this is over, Carter?" he spat. "This is just beginning." As the officers approached, Hargrove suddenly bolted toward a side exit. One officer pursued him while the other spoke into his radio. The moderator, looking thoroughly flustered, tried to regain control of the session. "Perhaps we should take a brief recess," he suggested, his voice strained. The audience began buzzing with excited conversation as Olivia gathered her materials. Her hands trembled slightly, the adrenaline of the confrontation finally catching up with her. James made his way to the stage, concern written across his features. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. Olivia nodded, managing a shaky smile. "I think so. Did you arrange for the police?" "After I found evidence of the hacking, yes," he confirmed. "But that performance, exposing his manipulated evidence so thoroughly, that was all you." "It was terrifying," she finished. "I was going to say brilliant." His admiration was evident. "You didn't just defend yourself, or me. You stood up for something more important." Their eyes met, and in that moment, surrounded by curious onlookers and conference officials, something shifted between them. A deepening of the connection that had begun with a mistaken key card. As they left the stage together, a reporter approached, requesting comments on what had just transpired. James stepped slightly in front of Olivia, protective. "No questions right now," he said firmly. The conference chair hurried over, apologizing profusely to Olivia for the disruption. "We had no idea Dr. Hargrove had this agenda." The officers have asked that you both remain available for statements. In the aftermath, they found a quiet corner of the conference center. Olivia sank into a chair, the full weight of what had happened settling over her. I just destroyed a man's reputation in front of the entire economics community, she said quietly. A man who was trying to destroy both of us, James reminded her gently. I know, and I don't regret exposing the truth. She looked up at him, her expression troubled. But this isn't who I am, public confrontations, police involvement. My life is research and teaching, not whatever this is. James nodded, understanding her discomfort. For what it's worth, I never wanted to drag you into my history with Hargrove. You didn't drag me anywhere, she corrected him. I made my own choices. A police officer approached, requesting that they provide formal statements. The next few hours passed in a blur of questions, explanations, and paperwork. The officers confirmed that Hargrove had been apprehended trying to leave the hotel. It was late afternoon by the time they were free to leave. Standing in the hotel lobby, James asked, "What do you need right now?" Olivia considered the question. What she needed wasn't something she could easily name, peace, perhaps, or perspective. Fresh air, she said finally. Somewhere away from all this. I know just the place, James replied. The car wound through city streets, then up into the green hills surrounding the metropolis. Olivia watched the urban landscape recede through the window, grateful for the growing distance between herself and the morning's events. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere I go when I need to think, James answered, keeping his eyes on the winding road ahead. It's not far. 20 minutes later, they pulled into a gravel driveway leading to a modest stone cottage. The building was nestled among tall pines, with a wraparound porch and climbing roses framing the entrance. It looked nothing like what she would have expected from a billionaire's retreat. This is yours? Olivia asked as they stepped out of the car. James nodded, retrieving a key from under a flowering pot. It belonged to my grandmother. When she passed, I couldn't bear to sell it. He unlocked the door, gesturing for her to enter. My staff maintains it, but I'm the only one who uses it. The interior was simple but welcoming. Comfortable furniture, shelves lined with well-read books, and large windows that filled the space with dappled light. No cutting-edge technology, no expensive art, just a home that had been loved. It's beautiful, Olivia said, feeling some of the day's tension begin to ease from her shoulders. There's a walking path behind the house that leads to a small lake, James offered. Would you like to see it? The path was dappled with sunlight filtering through the trees, the only sounds their footsteps and birdsong. Neither spoke as they walked, but the silence between them was comfortable rather than awkward. The lake appeared suddenly as they rounded a bend, a perfect circle of blue water surrounded by trees and flowering bushes. A small wooden dock extended into the water, with two Adirondack chairs positioned at its end. My grandmother called this her thinking spot, James said as they walked out onto the dock. She said the water helped clear her mind. They sat in the chairs, looking out over the calm surface. Olivia closed her eyes, feeling the gentle warmth of late afternoon sun on her face. For the first time since Hargrove had approached her, she felt her breathing slow to a normal rhythm. Thank you for bringing me here, she said after several minutes. It's exactly what I needed. James studied her profile, admiring the quiet strength he saw there. You were remarkable today, he said softly. Olivia opened her eyes, turning to face him. I was terrified, she admitted. But something happens when your principles are challenged directly. You either stand by them or you don't. There's no middle ground. That's what I've observed about you, James said thoughtfully. Your integrity isn't theoretical, it's who you are. She smiled slightly. Is that unusual in your world? More than it should be, he acknowledged. In business, especially at my level, compromise becomes second nature. The lines between right and wrong get negotiable. But not for you, she observed. James looked out at the water, his expression distant. I watched my father cross those lines, saw what it did to him, how it hollowed him out from the inside. He met her gaze again. I promised myself I'd never become that. Is that lonely? Olivia asked quietly. Standing firm when everyone around you is bending? The question caught him off guard with its insight. Yes, he admitted. It is. That explains a lot about you, she said. What do you mean? The walls you've built. The reputation for being cold and ruthless. She smiled gently. It's armor, isn't it? Protection against a world that constantly asks you to compromise. James felt strangely exposed by her perception, yet not threatened by it. You see more than most people, he said. Occupational hazard, Olivia replied. Economists are trained to look for the patterns beneath the surface. A comfortable silence fell between them again. The sun began to lower toward the horizon, casting long golden rays across the lake's surface. I should probably take you back to the hotel, James said eventually, though he made no move to stand. Your flight to London is tomorrow, isn't it? Olivia nodded, feeling a surprising reluctance at the thought of returning. In the afternoon, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. A recognition of possibilities, of paths that might diverge or converge depending on what happened next. Or, James said carefully, you could stay here tonight. The cottage has 2 bedrooms, he added quickly. You'd have your privacy. And in the morning, I could show you the rest of the property before taking you back. The invitation hung in the air between them. Olivia knew the sensible answer. Return to the hotel, pack her things, keep the boundaries clear. After all, she barely knew this man, despite the intense circumstances they'd shared. Yet something deeper than logic pulled at her. A sense that there was more to discover here, with him, in this peaceful sanctuary away from the world's complications. I'd like that, she said finally, to stay here tonight. His smile, genuine and unguarded, warmed something inside her. As dusk fell, they made a simple dinner from supplies in the well-stocked kitchen. James proved surprisingly capable, explaining that he often cooked for himself here when he needed to escape the pressures of his position. They ate on the porch, watching stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Their conversation moved easily from topic to topic. Books they'd loved, places they'd traveled, dreams they'd pursued and abandoned. I wanted to be a pianist when I was young, James revealed, sipping from a glass of wine. Studied seriously until I was 16. What happened? Olivia asked. My father's business started failing. I put aside music to study economics and finance instead. He shrugged. Practical choices. Do you still play? A shadow crossed his face. No, not for years. Olivia noticed a flicker of old pain in his expression but didn't press further. Instead, she shared her own story of growing up in a small town outside of Philadelphia, the daughter of teachers who encouraged her academic interests even when they couldn't fully understand her fascination with global economics. They were so proud when I got the position at UCL, she said, smiling at the memory, even though it meant moving an ocean away. They sound like wonderful parents, James observed. They are. Completely different from each other. My father's analytical, my mother's artistic, but somehow they balance perfectly. Her expression softened. 35 years married, and they still hold hands when they walk together. That's rare, James said, to maintain that kind of connection. It is, she agreed. But I think that's what made me who I am. Watching them, I learned that some things are worth having faith in even when the odds seem against them. Their eyes met in the dim porch light, and for a moment, neither spoke. The night sounds, crickets chirping, leaves rustling in a gentle breeze, filled the silence between them. Finally, James stood, gathering their plates. It's getting late. Let me show you to your room. The guest bedroom was cozy, with a patchwork quilt on the bed and fresh flowers on the nightstand. James handed her one of his t-shirts to sleep in and showed her where to find extra towels in the adjoining bathroom. If you need anything, I'll be just down the hall, he said. Thank you, Olivia replied. For all of this, the escape, the dinner, the conversation. You're welcome. He hesitated at the doorway. Good night, Olivia. Good night, James. After he left, Olivia changed into his t-shirt, which hung to her knees. She climbed into bed, expecting exhaustion to claim her immediately after the day's events. Instead, she found herself wide awake, her mind replaying moments from their time together. The trust in his eyes when he'd handed her his flash drive, the quiet vulnerability in his voice when he spoke about his father, the way he looked at her across the dinner table as if trying to memorize her features. Down the hall, James was equally sleepless. He stood at his bedroom window, looking out at the moonlit garden his grandmother had once tended. In just 2 days, Olivia Johnson had somehow breached defenses he'd maintained for decades. What was it about her that made him want to lower his guard? And what would happen when she returned to her life in London tomorrow? These questions circled in both their minds as midnight came and went. Eventually, Olivia rose and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Perhaps a glass of water would help her sleep. The kitchen was dark except for moonlight streaming through the windows. She filled a glass at the sink and had just taken a sip when a floorboard creaked behind her. She turned to find James standing in the doorway, wearing pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair slightly rumpled. I couldn't sleep, he explained. Neither could I, she admitted. He moved to the refrigerator, pouring himself a glass of water. Too much on your mind? Something like that. She leaned against the counter, studying him in the moonlight. Do you know what I keep thinking about? What's that? How different everything would be if I hadn't walked into your hotel room by mistake. She shook her head slightly. Such a small thing, yet it changed everything. James set his glass down, moving closer to her. Do you regret it? No, she said without hesitation. Do you? Not for a second. He was standing directly in front of her now, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Olivia. She looked up, meeting his gaze. Whatever he saw in her eyes made him reach out slowly, giving her every chance to step away. Instead, she moved toward him, closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, questioning. The second was not. His arms encircled her waist as hers wrapped around his neck, the blanket falling forgotten to the floor. Years of loneliness and careful distance dissolved in the connection between them, a recognition of something neither had been looking for but both had found. When they finally broke apart, breathing heavily, James rested his forehead against hers. I don't want you to leave tomorrow, he confessed. I know, she whispered. But I have responsibilities, a job, a life in London. And I have mine here, he acknowledged. So where does that leave us? Olivia brushed her fingers against his cheek, feeling the slight roughness of evening stubble. I don't know, she admitted, but I'm not ready to give up on finding out. He smiled, taking her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. Then we won't give up. We'll figure it out. They stayed there in the moonlit kitchen, talking in whispers like teenagers afraid of waking their parents. Eventually, they moved to the living room sofa, where they continued talking until dawn began to lighten the sky outside. Somewhere in those hours, as Olivia rested her head against James's shoulder and felt his arms secure around her, she realized something profound. Sometimes having faith in love wasn't about certainty or even probability. It was about recognizing possibility and being brave enough to explore it, despite all the rational reasons not to. And as the first birds began their morning songs outside the cottage windows, both Olivia and James knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. A journey that had begun with a wrong key card and led to something neither had expected to find. Morning sunlight streamed through the cottage windows, finding Olivia and James asleep on the sofa. They had talked until exhaustion finally claimed them, her head resting on his chest, his arm protective around her shoulders. A chirping bird outside the window woke Olivia first. For a moment, she lay still, listening to the steady rhythm of James's heartbeat beneath her ear. The events of the past 48 hours seemed almost dreamlike in the fresh light of morning. The keycard mix-up, Hargrove's scheme, the confrontation at the conference, and now this unexpected closeness with a man who had been a stranger just days ago. James stirred, his arm tightening slightly around her before his eyes opened. Good morning, he said, his voice rough with sleep. Morning, she replied, reluctantly sitting up. I think we finally talked ourselves to sleep. He smiled, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture so tender it made her breath catch. Are you hungry? I make decent pancakes. In the kitchen, they moved around each other with a surprising ease, as if they'd done this 100 times before. James mixed batter while Olivia sliced fresh fruit. Coffee brewed, filling the cottage with its rich aroma. Neither mentioned her departure, scheduled for later that day, though it hung unspoken between them. As they sat on the porch with their breakfast, watching morning mist rise from the lake, James finally broke the silence. I've been thinking. Dangerous, Olivia teased gently. He smiled. Maybe. But I've realized something over the past 2 days. He set his coffee down, turning to face her fully. My life, the one I built so carefully, is successful by most standards. But until you walked into my hotel room, I hadn't realized how empty it had become. Olivia felt her heart quicken. James? Let me finish, he said quietly. I'm not naive enough to think that 2 days can tell us everything we need to know about each other. But I do know that I don't want to just say goodbye at the airport and hope for the best. What are you suggesting? She asked carefully. Come back, he said simply. Not permanently, not yet, but soon. Spend a week, a month, whatever you can manage with your teaching schedule. Let's give this a real chance. Olivia looked out at the lake, considering his words. The practical obstacles were significant. Her position at UCL, his responsibilities at Carter Investments, an ocean between them. Yet the thought of simply returning to her life in London as if none of this had happened felt impossible. I could come back during term break, she said slowly. It's in 3 weeks. Hope flickered in his eyes. How long? 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if I arrange things with my department. 3 weeks, he repeated. It feels like forever. She smiled, taking his hand. I think we both need some time to process everything that's happened, to be sure this is real and not just a reaction to the intensity of the past 2 days. James nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in her caution. You're right. And 3 weeks gives me time to deal with the fallout from Hargrove and the merger. What will happen with Hargrove? She asked. He'll face charges for corporate espionage and hacking at minimum, James replied. But people like him rarely serve much time. His reputation is destroyed, though, which for Hargrove might be worse than prison. He hesitated before adding, the merger will proceed as planned, but with additional scrutiny because of the leak. It means a lot of long hours ahead. For both of us, Olivia agreed. I have a research grant proposal due next month, papers to grade, committee meetings. Their eyes met in understanding. 2 people with full, demanding lives trying to figure out how to make room for something unexpected and precious. We'll need to be intentional, James said, about making this work. Yes, she agreed, but I think it's worth it. He leaned forward, kissing her softly. Definitely worth it. They spent their remaining hours at the cottage walking the property, James showing her his grandmother's gardens and telling stories from his childhood visits. Olivia listened, storing away these glimpses into the man behind the billionaire facade, adding them to the growing collection of things she was coming to love about him. As midday approached, they reluctantly returned to the cottage to gather their things. Reality was calling, her flight to London, his responsibilities at Carter Investments. I should get you back to the hotel, James said, checking his watch. You'll need time to pack before your car to the airport. Olivia nodded, trying to ignore the heaviness settling in her chest. Yes, I suppose we should go. As they drove back toward the city, James's phone rang through the car's speakers. He glanced at the display. It's my office. Do you mind if I take it? Of course not, she replied. Carter, he answered, his voice shifting into the confident, authoritative tone she imagined he used in board meetings. His CFO's voice filled the car. James, we've got a situation with the Horizon deal. The board is calling an emergency meeting in 2 hours. What happened? James asked, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. Hargrove reached out to them before his arrest, planted enough doubt that they're reconsidering the terms. James's jaw tightened. I'll be there. He ended the call, turning to Olivia with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry. Don't be, she said quickly. This is your company, your responsibility. I understand. It means I can't take you to the airport, he said, the regret evident in his voice. James, it's fine, she assured him. I'm perfectly capable of getting myself to an airport. He smiled slightly. I know you are. I just wanted more time. We'll have time, she promised. 3 weeks isn't so long. When they reached the hotel, James pulled into the circular drive and turned to her, taking both her hands in his. Call me when you land? I don't care what time it is here. I will, she agreed. He leaned across the console, kissing her with an intensity that spoke of everything they weren't saying. The fear that this fragile connection might not survive the separation, the hope that it would, the surprise of finding each other in the first place. 3 weeks, he murmured against her lips. 3 weeks, she confirmed, then forced herself to pull away and exit the car before her resolve weakened. As she watched his car drive away, Olivia felt a momentary doubt. Was she being foolish? Falling for a man she'd known for only 2 days, a man whose world was so different from her own? But as she turned to enter the hotel, she remembered his face in the moonlight, the honesty in his eyes when he spoke about his father, the way he'd looked at her as if she were something precious. Some things, she decided, were worth having faith in even against the odds. 3 weeks later, James stood at the international arrivals gate, scanning the emerging passengers for a glimpse of Olivia. When she finally appeared, pulling her suitcase and looking slightly tired from the long flight, his heart seemed to restart after a 3-week pause. She spotted him and smiled, that particular smile he'd replayed in his memory countless times since she'd left. As she walked toward him, everything else faded into the background. The noise of the terminal, the crowds of travelers, the constant pinging of his phone with messages from the office. Welcome back, he said when she reached him. It's good to be back, she replied, her voice warm with promise. As he took her suitcase with one hand and clasped her free hand with the other, James felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of coming home, not to a place but to a person. And in that moment, both of them knew that this was just the beginning of their story. The late autumn rain pelted against the windows of James's penthouse apartment, creating a cozy backdrop for the quiet evening. Olivia sat curled on his sofa, papers spread around her as she reviewed student dissertations she'd brought from London. Across the room, James worked at his desk, occasionally glancing up to watch her. The way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, how she twirled her pen between her fingers when thinking. 2 weeks into her visit, they had fallen into a comfortable rhythm, working separately but together during the days, exploring the city or simply enjoying each other's company in the evenings. Tonight, they had opted to stay in, ordering dinner and settling into comfortable silence punctuated by occasional conversation. Olivia looked up, catching James watching her. "What?" she asked, smiling. Later, after their guests had departed and they were alone again, James led Olivia to the balcony. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket and withdrawing a small box. Olivia's eyes widened. "James?" He opened it, revealing not a ring as she might have feared, but a delicate silver key on a chain. "It's a key to the cottage," he explained. "I want you to know you're welcome there anytime, whether I can be there or not. It can be your sanctuary too when you need one." Tears filled her eyes as she took the necklace, understanding the significance of the gesture. The cottage was his private refuge, the one place he truly let his guard down. Giving her access to it meant something deeper than mere convenience. "Thank you," she whispered as he fastened the chain around her neck. "I'll treasure it." He drew her close, kissing her with all the emotion he couldn't quite put into words yet. When they separated, she looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "We'll make this work," she said with quiet determination. "Somehow." "Yes," he agreed. "We will." The next morning at the airport was harder than either had anticipated. Standing at the security checkpoint, Olivia clutched the key around her neck like a talisman. 3 months, James said, holding both her hands. "Christmas break. You'll come back." 3 months, she repeated. "We can manage that." Their goodbye kiss was brief but intense, a promise rather than an ending. As Olivia walked through security and disappeared from view, James felt a hollow sensation in his chest, as if something essential had been removed. On the plane, Olivia stared out the window as America receded beneath her, replaced by endless ocean. The practical part of her brain, the economist who analyzed problems logically, told her that this relationship faced significant challenges. Different continents, different careers, different worlds. But her hand kept returning to the key against her heart, a tangible reminder of the connection they'd formed. And as the plane carried her back to London, she found herself having faith that somehow they would find their way forward together. Because some things, against all odds and logical analysis, were simply meant to be. December brought bitter cold to London, along with the frantic rush of end-of-term grading and committee meetings. Olivia hurried across campus, pulling her coat tighter against the icy wind. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, likely James calling during his brief lunch break as he had every day since she'd returned. She ducked into the shelter of a stone archway and answered, smiling despite her exhaustion. "Hey you." "Hey yourself," his familiar voice responded, warming her despite the distance. "How's the distinguished professor today?" "Not officially distinguished yet," she corrected, though her interview for the research chair had gone exceptionally well. "Just thoroughly freezing and buried in paperwork." "Sounds glamorous," he teased. "Want to trade? I've got back-to-back meetings until 9 tonight." They chatted for a few precious minutes, about her students, his latest acquisition deal, the upcoming holidays when they would finally be together again. These brief connections had become the highlight of their days, sustaining them through the separation. 13 days, she reminded him as they prepared to hang up. Then 3 whole weeks together. "I'm counting every hour," he assured her. "I miss you, Olivia." "I miss you too," she replied softly. "Talk tomorrow?" "Wouldn't miss it." She ended the call, tucking the phone away and touching the key that hung beneath her blouse, a habit she developed over the past months. Their daily calls and weekend video chats had kept their connection strong, but nothing could replace the simple comfort of being in the same room. As she continued toward her office, Olivia spotted Professor Winters, the department chair, waving to her from the faculty lounge. "Dr. Johnson." "A moment, please." She altered course, joining the older woman by the coffee machine. "Good morning, Professor Winters." "Excellent news," Winters beamed, handing Olivia a steaming cup. "The committee has reached a unanimous decision. The distinguished research chair is yours if you want it." Olivia nearly dropped the cup. "Already?" I thought the decision wouldn't come until next term. We saw no reason to delay, Winters explained. Your work on financial transparency in developing economies has garnered international attention. The university is eager to support your continued research. She lowered her voice. Between us, the Vice-Chancellor himself advocated for fast-tracking your appointment. I'm honored, Olivia said, genuinely moved by the recognition. There is one additional aspect, Winters continued. The Odin Foundation has offered to fund an expansion of your research, a 3-year project spanning multiple countries. It would mean significant travel, of course, but with a substantial budget and staff. Olivia's mind raced. The Odin Foundation was one of the most prestigious funding sources in her field. Such an opportunity could elevate her research to unprecedented impact. The full proposal is in your inbox, Winters added. The foundation needs your answer by New Year's. Thank you for letting me know, Olivia managed, her thoughts already churning with the implications. The rest of the day passed in a blur. In her office, Olivia studied the Odin Foundation's proposal, comprehensive, ambitious, and exactly aligned with her research goals. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. It would also mean postponing her Christmas trip to see James. The initial planning meetings were scheduled for the very weeks they planned to be together. That evening, rather than their usual quick call, Olivia requested a video chat. When James's face appeared on her screen, his smile faded quickly as he noticed her expression. What's wrong? He asked immediately. She took a deep breath and explained, the research chair appointment, the Odin Foundation grant, the scheduling conflict. As she spoke, she watched his face carefully, seeing disappointment war with pride in her accomplishments. This is incredible, he said when she finished. You deserve every bit of recognition. But it means changing our plans, she said quietly. The initial meetings can't be rescheduled. They've gathered experts from around the world. James was silent for a moment, visibly processing the news. When would we see each other? February, she said. During reading week. It's the earliest I can come. Another 2 months, he murmured, not quite hiding his disappointment. I'm sorry, she said, feeling torn between a professional opportunity and their relationship. I know we've been counting on Christmas together. James straightened, putting on the same face she'd seen when he handled business crises. Don't apologize. This is important. I understand that. We'll adjust. But something in his voice told her he was struggling more than he admitted. The conversation shifted to logistics. His schedule in February, whether he could possibly visit London in January. It was practical, sensible, and lacking the warmth that usually characterized their calls. As they said goodnight, Olivia felt a knot of worry forming in her stomach. Was their connection strong enough to withstand not just distance, but the competing demands of their separate lives? The next morning, she tried to call him at their usual time, but the call went to voicemail. Later, she received a brief text. Sorry, emergency board meeting. Talk tomorrow. Similar messages followed over the next few days, always polite, always with legitimate reasons, but creating a growing distance between them. Their daily calls became every other day then less. When they did speak, their conversations focused on work, careful and superficial. A week before Christmas, Olivia sat alone in her flat, staring at her phone. James had canceled their planned video call, again, citing a major client crisis. She understood the demands of his position, just as he understood hers, but understanding didn't ease the ache of missing him. On impulse, she touched the key hanging around her neck and made a decision. Pulling out her laptop, she booked a flight to America for the following evening. She had submitted her grades, the Odin Foundation meetings didn't begin until after Christmas, and she suddenly couldn't bear the thought of spending the holiday alone, drifting further from the man she had come to love. She didn't tell him she was coming. It was impulsive, perhaps even foolish, but she needed to see him face to face, to breach this growing divide between them before it became insurmountable. 26 hours later, exhausted from the overnight flight and subsequent drive, Olivia pulled up to James's cottage in the hills. Snow blanketed the ground, transforming the landscape into something from a fairy tale. Lights glowed warmly in the windows, telling her he was there, likely seeking solitude as he often did when work became overwhelming. Her heart pounding, she retrieved her suitcase from the rental car and made her way to the front door. The key around her neck, never used until now, slid perfectly into the lock. The door swung open to reveal the cozy interior, a fire crackling in the stone fireplace. The scent of pine from the Christmas tree in the corner mingled with cinnamon and coffee. It felt like coming home despite having been there only once before. James? She called softly, setting down her suitcase. A sound from the kitchen was followed by his appearance in the doorway, mug in hand, shock written across his features. "Olivia," he said in disbelief. "What are you? How did you?" "You gave me a key," she reminded him, touching the necklace. "And I couldn't stay away any longer." For a moment, he just stared at her, and she feared she'd miscalculated badly. Then the mug was placed hastily on a side table, and in 3 long strides, he crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. The kiss was desperate, hungry, full of the longing they'd both been suppressing. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I thought I'd lost you," he murmured. "Why would you think that?" she asked, confused. He led her to the sofa, keeping her hand firmly in his as if afraid she might disappear. "You have this amazing opportunity, exactly what you've worked for all these years. And I've been sitting here, selfishly wishing you'd turn it down to be with me instead." He shook his head. "I pulled back because I didn't want to be the person who asked you to choose." "Oh, James," she said softly, understanding the dawning. "I never saw it as a choice between you and my career." "Didn't you?" he asked, his gaze steady on hers. 3 years of research across multiple countries, the distinguished chair position in London, all while I'm bound to Carter Investments here. How is that not a choice? Olivia considered his words carefully. "It's not a choice between you or my career," she repeated firmly. "It's a challenge for us to figure out together." "I accepted the research chair," she admitted, "but I haven't given the Odin Foundation my final answer yet." Hope flickered in his eyes. "Why not?" "Because I wanted to talk to you first. Really talk, not through screens and rushed phone calls." She took both his hands in hers. "I love my work, James. But these past months have shown me something else. I love you too." The words hung in the air between them, the first time either had said them aloud. James's eyes widened, then softened with emotion. "I love you too," he said, his voice rough with feeling. "More than I ever thought possible." She smiled, squeezing his hands. "Then we figure this out together. Maybe the project can be structured differently. Maybe Carter Investments has interest in some of the same regions I'll be researching. Maybe." He silenced her with another kiss, gentle this time. "Maybe we stop trying to solve everything tonight," he suggested. "You're here. That's what matters right now." The next morning, they woke tangled together in the master bedroom, winter sunlight streaming through the windows. For the first time in months, there were no meetings demanding their attention, no schedules pulling them apart. They spent the day reconnecting, talking honestly about their fears and hopes, cooking together, walking through the snowy woods to the lake, now frozen over and glittering in the December sun. As evening fell, they sat before the fire, Olivia curled against James's side, his arm around her shoulders. The Christmas tree lights twinkled in the corner, casting a warm glow over the room. "I've been thinking," James said, breaking their comfortable silence, "about us, about the future." Olivia looked up at him, sensing something important coming. "What would you think about a Carter Investments office in London?" he asked carefully. "Not as a branch, but as our European headquarters." She sat up straighter, studying his face. "Are you serious?" "Completely," he replied. "I've been exploring the idea for weeks actually. The merger with Horizon Tech gives us a substantial European client base. A London headquarters makes strategic sense. And the fact that I'll be based there for the next 5 years?" she asked, trying to read his expression. "Is personal motivation for me to pursue a sound business decision," he acknowledged with a smile. "I'd still need to be in the States regularly, but I could spend at least half my time in London." Hope loomed in Olivia's chest. "And the Odin Foundation project?" "We support it fully," he said without hesitation. "You travel for your research, I travel for Carter Investments, and we coordinate so our paths cross as often as possible. It won't be perfect, but it could work," she finished, the possibilities unfolding before her. No impossible choices, no career sacrifices, just 2 people committed to finding a path forward together. "It could definitely work," he agreed, pulling her close again. "If we both have faith in us." Outside, snow began to fall again, adding a fresh layer to the winter landscape. Inside the cottage, wrapped in each other's arms, Olivia and James planned a future neither had imagined that night when a wrong key card had brought them together. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, separations, moments of doubt. But as the fire crackled and the snow fell, they both knew with certainty that what they had found was worth every effort to keep. "Merry Christmas," James whispered, kissing her temple. "Merry Christmas," she replied, secure in his embrace and in the knowledge that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings led to the most beautiful journeys. 1 year later, the Grand Plaza Hotel's ballroom sparkled with holiday decorations, the annual International Finance Conference Gala in full swing. At a quiet table in the corner, Olivia sipped champagne, watching James across the room as he chatted with colleagues. He caught her eye and smiled, that special smile reserved only for her, before excusing himself and making his way back to her side. "Sorry about that," he said, sliding into the chair beside her. Marcus needed a quick decision on the Singapore acquisition. "No apology necessary," she assured him, laying her hand over his. "I've been enjoying people watching and reflecting." "On what?" he asked, turning his hand to intertwine their fingers. "On how much has changed in a year," she replied. "Last year's conference was eventful." James laughed softly. "That's one word for it. Life-changing might be another." Olivia smiled, thinking of all that had transpired since that fateful night when she walked into his hotel room by mistake. The distinguished research chair was hers now, her name freshly painted on the office door at UCF. The Odin Foundation project was 6 months underway, already yielding promising results from the first phase in Ghana. And James, he kept his promise, establishing Carter Investments' European headquarters in London. He divided his time between continents, spending 2 weeks in London, 2 weeks in America, with Olivia joining him when her research and teaching schedule allowed. They'd made the cottage their shared sanctuary, retreating there whenever both were stateside. It wasn't perfect. There were still separations, missed calls due to time differences, the occasional frustration of planning around two demanding careers. But they'd learned to make the most of their time together, to communicate honestly during their time apart, and to maintain faith in what they were building together. "I just realized something," James said, glancing around the ballroom. "We're in the exact same hotel where we met. Room 3001, Olivia recalled with a smile. "I wonder if they fixed their key card system." "Let's not find out," he suggested, squeezing her hand. "I think one mix-up for a lifetime is enough, don't you?" Their conversation was interrupted by the conference chairman taking the microphone, announcing that dinner would be served shortly. As guests began moving toward their assigned tables, James leaned closer to Olivia. "What would you think about skipping the rubber chicken dinner?" he murmured. "I have something I'd like to show you." Intrigued by the hint of mystery in his voice, Olivia nodded. They slipped out of the ballroom discreetly, James leading her toward the elevators. "Where are we going?" she asked as they stepped inside, and he pressed the button for the 30th floor. "You'll see," he replied, an unusual nervousness in his expression. When the doors opened, he guided her down the hallway, stopping in front of a familiar door, Suite 3001. Olivia looked at him questioningly as he produced a key card. "James, what are you doing?" "Indulge me," he said with a smile, sliding the card into the lock. The green light flashed, and he pushed the door open, gesturing for her to enter first. Olivia stepped into the suite and gasped. The room was transformed, dozens of candles creating a warm glow, white rose petals scattered across the floor, a small table set for two by the window overlooking the city lights. "What is all this?" she asked, turning to find James watching her reaction intently. "I wanted to bring us full circle," he explained, taking her hands in his. "1 year ago, a mix-up brought you into my room and changed everything." His voice grew softer, more serious. "You walked into my life by accident, but staying there, that was a choice we made together." Olivia felt tears pricking at her eyes as he continued. "This year hasn't been easy," he acknowledged. "The distance, our schedules, learning how to balance two demanding careers and still make time for us. But every challenge has only made me more certain of one thing." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box, and knelt before her. Olivia's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald ring surrounded by diamonds. "Olivia Johnson," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, "I love you. Your brilliance, your integrity, your compassion, your strength. I love how you challenge me, how you believe in me, how you've helped me become a better man than I ever thought I could be." He took a breath. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, Olivia couldn't speak, overcome by emotion. Then, with absolute certainty, she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, James, I will." His face lit with joy as he slid the ring onto her finger, then stood to pull her into his arms. Their kiss was tender, full of promise and shared dreams. When they finally broke apart, Olivia touched the emerald on her finger, admiring how it caught the candlelight. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It reminded me of your eyes." James explained. And emeralds symbolize truth and faith, two things that have defined our relationship from the beginning. He led her to the table by the window, where champagne waited in an ice bucket. As he poured two glasses, Olivia thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From strangers to lovers to partners, overcoming distance, doubt, and the competing demands of their separate worlds. To us, James said, raising his glass. And to wrong key cards. Olivia laughed, clinking her glass against his. To having faith, she added, even when it seems impossible. Later that night, as they lay together in the very suite where their story had begun, Olivia rested her head on James's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Outside the windows, the city glittered with holiday lights, a beautiful backdrop to their private celebration. What are you thinking? James asked, running his fingers gently through her hair. About how different everything might have been, she replied. If I'd gone back downstairs that night instead of coming to find the manager with me. If I'd believed Hargrove's lies. If I'd chosen the safer path and never taken a chance on us. James was quiet for a moment, considering. I don't think we would have missed each other, he said finally. Some connections are meant to happen one way or another. Olivia smiled, raising her head to look at him. That's surprisingly unscientific coming from you. You've changed me, he said simply. Taught me that not everything can be analyzed in terms of risk and return. Love isn't a business transaction, she agreed, then added with a teasing smile, though I do think I got the better end of the deal. He laughed, pulling her closer. I'm the one marrying the distinguished research chair, international economic expert, and the most beautiful woman I've ever met. I think I win. Maybe we both win, she suggested, settling back against him contentedly. They still had challenges ahead, wedding plans to coordinate across continents, two homes to potentially combine, busy careers to balance. The path forward wouldn't always be smooth, but as Olivia drifted toward sleep in James's arms, she felt complete confidence in their shared future. Because sometimes the most unexpected beginnings led to the most beautiful journeys. Sometimes a simple mistake, a wrong key card, could lead to the most important discovery of all. That love, when you found it, was always worth having faith in no matter the odds. And in the quiet of the night, in the very room where it all began, Olivia and James held on to each other, secure in the knowledge that they had found something rare and precious. A love strong enough to bridge different worlds, to overcome distance and doubt, to grow stronger through every challenge. A love that had started with the wrong key card, but had found exactly the right destination.